April, very good to see you. This video today is really special. First of all, it's for anybody who is on a fixed income. We're going to talk through some really smart strategies to save money, but we need to start with the topic of property taxes. This is, of course, a national issue, but it's also hitting very close to home for you, April, which is why you were recently interviewed by 11 Alive. This story's on your YouTube page right now. People want to go check it out. But you were invited to share your expertise about how to save money. And the interview is also very timely, of course, because Governor Kemp recently signed a law that would cap property tax increases. So let's start at the top. What are some strategies that could save us money on property taxes?
My personal assessment of my home has increased 85% since
Wow.
2007. So much higher increase than if we look on any of Zillow or any of those websites to see what the value is. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart and that I've been dealing with personally, but also with the retirees that we work with every day.
Right.
Because like you mentioned, when you're on a fixed income, increases like this are very hard to swallow. Even if you
Right.
don't have a mortgage anymore, you've still got those property taxes and at least some extent in most counties. And you have a couple of different things that you can really start to do. One is shopping your insurance. I encourage people to do that every 2 to 3 years because with those property value increases, not only are taxes increasing, we're also seeing pretty significant increases. Some metrics say 20% on average year over
Right.
year on
Yeah.
homeowners insurance. And a lot of times those increases continue to happen internally, but you might be able to find a more competitive rate by shopping around. And this is when budgeting becomes paramount because inflation is real. It has slowed down from where it was, but that does not mean prices have come down. It just means
Mm-mm.
they're increasing slower. So a very detailed and disciplined budget can make a big difference in times like these.
Mm-hmm. And there were some resources that you wanted to point out for homeowners, of course. We've probably heard of the homeowners exemption, but where should we go to find out what we are eligible for?
You should Google the county that you live in and homestead exemption to make sure you've got the appropriate website. This is something that's county based. Both of our offices in Snellville and Suwannee, they're both in Gwinnett County. So we'll use that as an example. April 1st is the deadline for some of them. January 1st is the deadline for others. So make sure that you look into what that deadline is for your particular county in Georgia and ensure that you are applying proactively. Sometimes you might be able to get at least a reduction if your income is too high for an exemption, and a reduction is better than nothing. Once you qualify, you do not have to continue, at least in Gwinnett County, you don't have to continue to apply or meet that criteria. It's one
Mm.
and done. So that's an important one that can save a good amount of money. And the bill that you mentioned earlier, Erin, that Governor Kemp signed that we'll have the opportunity to vote on this November could also help cap the increases that can take place on assessed values of homes. We've seen some conflicting information out the gate here. Some say that it'll be 3% cap, some the rate of inflation. So a lot of digging to do. That bill was just signed last Friday, the 19th of April. So a lot of digging to do to determine where that cap might fall, but something that could certainly be important, especially when we're seeing increases like we have in recent years.
Yeah, it does feel out of control in a lot of ways. I'm glad you brought up, of course, insurance premiums. That's another big one. The other one that I want to talk through, though, is, other necessary expenses like groceries. It kind of feels like we have no control over this right now. What should we be doing?
One thing that I encourage folks to do is to really shop your sales. I started doing this personally about a year and a half ago, and it's amazing how much you can save on a weekly basis with some effort. Clip digital coupons. Here locally, Kroger and Publix both have digital coupons that you can take advantage of. There are certain memberships like the Kroger Boost membership where you can earn additional points on your groceries, get a discount on your gas. So really shop those sales. Make the effort to go to more than one grocery store on a weekly basis. And personally, we've been saving sometimes $50, $60 a week. I've even had a couple of weeks where we saved closer
Wow.
to 100 by doing this
Wow.
and taking advantage of buy one get one deals and stocking up when things are half price, because that sticker shock on groceries is something else in the last year and a half.
Right. And I'm just going to point out, you know what you're saving because you have a detailed budget at home. So that is helpful to point out that you practice what you preach. I want to move on to diversifying income streams, which is, of course, very important in retirement. This is when, though, if you're about to retire, you need to ask yourself really important questions. And that is if you have adequately accounted for inflation and possibly whether you should be considering a hybrid retirement.
Yep. A lot of times, what we find first on the taxes is that people have a number in mind for what they need in order to live comfortably during their retirement years. What they don't often account for is the fact that that's a net number that they're thinking about. They're not necessarily adequately accounting for federal and possibly state taxes in that calculation as well. If you've got a
Mm,
15% federal rate and a 6% rate for the state of Georgia, that's 21% additional income that you're going to need to pay the taxes on it if you're not well diversified from an income tax perspective. If you don't have any sources of income that are income tax free, that's a significant difference, 21% in that example. And accounting for inflation. I mean, if we look at just the last few years alone, people on average right now, by a lot of estimates, are spending $1,000 a month more than they were just a couple of years ago just to maintain the
right,
same standard of living. This is
right.
not, you know, increasing the standard of living or additional travel or anything of that nature. It's $1,000 more a month for the average family just to survive right now and maintain their
Mhm.
standard of living. So making sure that we've accounted for that over time, we can't make the assumption that things are going to cost the same 10 years from now, 20 years from now as they do now. And because
Of
of
course.
that, and because of longevity, we're seeing a lot more people start to do a hybrid retirement where perhaps you
Mhm.
retire from your career job and take on another job that sometimes might even be part-time, but could bring in several $100s a month, potentially bridge a gap to Medicare for health insurance purposes, and really just help make sure that you have another strategy to throw out the inflation and just the general cost of living across the board right now being as high as it is.
Right. We also need to talk through one of the best hedges against inflation, which is, of course, investing, right? Making sure that you are invested in the market wisely. And in retirement, it's crucial to strike that proper balance between preserving capital and generating sufficient returns, again, to combat inflation, which is why working with a professional like you can be incredibly helpful.
We look at two primary things when it comes to making sure that you're positioned to keep pace with inflation overall. One is ensuring that you don't have too much risk. It's much more
Mhm.
difficult to make it back when you're retired or close to retirement. So, having a good balance, making sure you have strategies in place. Sometimes that might include guaranteed sources of income and pension, social security, and also other sources of income like annuities. And a lot of times, what we find is that people are not adequately accounting for inflation when it comes to social security, what will be generated there. So, a lot of little things to take a look at and make sure that you've accounted for what is realistic in your budget plan,
Mhm.
and making sure that you have a strategy in place for those things.
Because there is no one answer, but I know you really enjoy putting the pieces of everybody's unique puzzle together. So, April, if somebody would like to talk through how to make sure that their money lasts their entire retirement, what's the best way to reach you?
You can reach out to us at either office at any time or reach out to us on our website at theretirementfamily.com.
All right, April, thank you very much.
Thank you, Erin.